August 17th, 1943, just before 8 in the morning. There's this guy, Technical Sergeant James McKenna, crouched under the left wing of a P-38 Lightning at an airfield in New Guinea. He's watching his pilot climb into the cockpit. Lieutenant Robert Hayes, 23 years old, 6 combat missions, 0 kills. Here's the thing. Hayes is about to fly straight into 18 Japanese fighters waiting for him up there. McKenna knows Hayes probably isn't coming back, but nobody else knows what McKenna just did. He spent the last 8 minutes working on Hayes's aircraft, changed something small. What happened in the next 17 minutes would change how every P-38 in the Pacific flew. But listen, this story doesn't start with Hayes. It starts with the guys who didn't make it back. Quick thing before we dive in. A piece of piano wire changed the entire air war in the Pacific, and the guy who figured it out? His name's in 0 official records. If that sounds wild to you, hit that like button and subscribe. Because we've got tons of forgotten stories like this one. Turn on notifications so you don't miss them. All right, let's get into it. The P-38 Lightning, twin-engine beast, fastest fighter in the Pacific theater, absolutely devastating at high altitude. When American pilots got this thing up to speed, it was untouchable. But here's the problem. It had one weakness that was getting pilots killed every single day. It couldn't turn with a Japanese Zero. The Zero was lighter, more agile, could whip through a full horizontal turn in half the time a P-38 needed, and in a dogfight that difference meant everything. American training was clear about this. Never turn with a Zero. Never try to outmaneuver them. You use your speed. You use your altitude. You dive in, shoot, climb out, hit and run. Don't get caught in a turning fight. Simple, right? Except it wasn't working. The Zeros were too smart. They'd bait American pilots into turns, cut inside their turning radius, get on their tail, and that was it. Past 6 weeks, 37 P-38s gone. Most of them got caught in turning fights they couldn't escape. Lieutenant David Chen was one of the lucky ones. July 9th, 1943. Chen had been in theatre for 3 weeks. McKenna worked on his aircraft every morning. They'd talk about California. Chen was from Sacramento, McKenna from Long Beach. Both worked on cars before the war. Chen took off early one morning on a fighter sweep, came back 2 hours later with 3 bullet holes in his left boom and a story about a Zero that got inside his turn. Chen said he tried to roll out and dive away like he was supposed to, but the airplane felt slow to respond. Like there was this weird delay between when he moved the stick and when the aircraft actually rolled. The Zero almost got him. Only thing that saved him was his wingman shooting the Zero off his tail. McKenna looked at those bullet holes. They were in a tight group, perfect deflection shooting. The Zero pilot had led Chen perfectly, anticipated exactly where Chen's airplane would be. That shouldn't have been possible if Chen rolled hard and dove immediately. Unless the airplane delayed just long enough for the Zero to get the lead right. Chen didn't fly again. His aircraft went back for repairs. McKenna never saw him again. 3 weeks later, he heard Chen was gone. Different P-38, same story. Caught in a turning fight, couldn't roll out fast enough. Then there was Captain William Morrison. Now, Morrison was different. Flight leader. Experienced. 11 kills to his name. He knew the P-38 inside and out. Knew its limitations. Flew smart. On August 3rd, Morrison's flight intercepted 8 Zeros at 12,000 feet over Oro Bay. Morrison got one on the first pass, came around for another run. 2 Zeros reversed on him. McKenna heard the radio traffic afterward. Morrison tried to roll inverted and split S away. Called out that his controls felt mushy. The Zeros stayed with him through the whole maneuver. Shot him down at 4,000 feet. Morrison's wingman said it looked like Morrison's airplane wasn't responding fast enough, like he was fighting the controls. Morrison went down with the aircraft. His crew chief was a buddy of McKenna's, guy named Rodriguez from Texas. Rodriguez checked everything after they recovered the wreckage: engine settings, control surface rigging, cable tensions. Everything looked fine, nothing obviously wrong with the airplane. But something wasn't adding up. By mid-August, McKenna had watched 17 pilots go down. Some he knew well. Most he'd only met briefly while doing pre-flight checks. But he'd worked on all their aircraft, signed off their maintenance logs, watched them taxi out, watched them take off. Some came back, some didn't. The ones who came back told the same story. The P-38 felt slow to respond in hard manoeuvring, like there was this slight lag between control input and aircraft reaction. Most pilots figured that was just how the airplane handled. Heavy fighter, big control surfaces, some delay was expected. But McKenna knew that wasn't normal. He'd felt that delay with his own hands when he worked on the control cables, and he started noticing something nobody else picked up on. So here's what McKenna figured out. During routine maintenance, he's working on the control cables. The P-38's aileron control cables run through the twin booms to the tail section, then forward through pulleys to the wing control surfaces. And McKenna notices something. There's slack in the cable system. Not much, maybe 3/8 of an inch at full deflection. Tiny amount. But that tiny bit of slack created a delay, a fraction of a second between when the pilot moved the stick and when the aileron actually responded. At high speeds, didn't matter. But at low speeds during hard turning maneuvers? That fraction of a second was the difference between rolling inside a zero's turn and getting shot down. Here's the wild part. McKenna could hear it. He started paying attention to the sound the cables made when he tensioned them during maintenance. There was this specific tone, sort of a low twang when you plucked them. Loose cables sounded different than tight cables. McKenna could hear the difference. Every P-38 on the line had cables that sounded slightly loose. He mentioned this to the engineering officer a couple months back. Guy told him that's just how the cables were designed. Factory specs. Everything was built to those specifications, and Lockheed was 7,000 miles away in California. Not much anyone could do about it at a field maintenance level. So nothing changed. Every morning, same thing. McKenna would work through his checks, fuel levels, oil, ammunition loads, watch the pilots walk out to their aircraft, watch them climb into cockpits, watch them take off, and he knew, those control cables had that delay built into them. That hesitation pilots kept mentioning right before they went down. 17 guys in 6 weeks, all of them describing the same thing. The airplane felt like it was fighting them, like there was mud in the controls, and McKenna was the only one who understood why. The worst part? The smell. Every morning that maintenance area smelled like aviation fuel and hot metal and hydraulic fluid, the smell of aircraft getting ready for combat. Some of those aircraft would come back. Some wouldn't. And McKenna would be there the next morning, same smells, working on more aircraft, watching more guys head out. He mentioned the cable issue to Rodriguez one evening after Morrison went down. Rodriguez asked what could be done about it. McKenna said he'd been thinking about it. There might be something. He wasn't sure yet, but there might be a way to fix it. Rodriguez looked at him for a long moment, then said if there was something that could help, he wanted to know. But before McKenna could figure anything out, Lieutenant Thomas Parker didn't come back. Lieutenant Robert Hayes, 23 years old, farm kid from Iowa, 6 combat missions in 2 months, 0 kills. Not because he was a bad pilot, he wasn't. He just couldn't seem to get the shots he needed. The tactics worked for some guys, but Hayes kept ending up in positions where he couldn't connect. Third mission, Hayes dove on a 0 from altitude, built up speed to 400 miles per hour, came in from the sun. got the Zero in his gun sight, started to pull lead for deflection. The Zero snap-rolled left and dove. Hayes tried to follow. His P-38 rolled into the turn, but it felt like the thing was moving through mud. By the time his aircraft pointed where he wanted it, the Zero was gone. Hayes pulled out, climbed back to altitude. Didn't fire a single shot. Fourth mission was worse. Hayes and his wingman jumped 2 Zeros at 15,000 feet. Hayes got the first burst off, missed. The Zero reversed hard right. Hayes rolled to follow. His wingman called out 2 more Zeros coming in from above. Hayes tried to roll back level and dive away. The airplane responded, but slowly. Just slowly enough that one of those diving Zeros got a 3-second burst into Hayes's right boom. 20mm cannon shells. They didn't penetrate, but they scared Hayes badly enough that he broke off and ran for home with his engines smoking. Fifth mission, Hayes watched his wingman go down. The wingman's name was Lieutenant Thomas Parker, 21 years old, from Boston. They'd gone through training together. August 14th, Parker got separated from the formation during a dogfight. 2 Zeros got on his tail. Parker tried everything. Rolled hard, reversed, tried to scissor. The Zeros stayed with him through every maneuver. Hayes heard Parker on the radio calling for help. Heard the panic in his voice. Heard him say his airplane wasn't turning fast enough. Heard the gunfire. Heard Parker scream. Then nothing. Hayes didn't sleep that night. Neither did most of the squadron. Parker's bed stayed empty. His personal effects got packed up and shipped home. His P-38 was written off as combat loss. Everything checked out mechanically. McKenna had worked on Parker's aircraft that morning. Everything was dialed in. Engine timing, control surface alignment, cables tensioned properly. The airplane was in perfect shape. But Parker was gone anyway, and McKenna knew why. That fraction of a second delay in the controls, that tiny bit of slack in the cable system. It had taken Parker just like it had taken Morrison and Chen and 14 others. August 16th evening. Hayes came to the maintenance area, found McKenna working on his assigned P-38. Hayes asked if there was anything McKenna could do to make the airplane roll faster. Anything at all. He just wanted a chance to get a shot off before the Zeros got him. McKenna looked at Hayes, saw the fear, saw the exhaustion, saw a kid who knew what was probably coming if something didn't change. McKenna told Hayes to come back in the morning. He'd see what he could do. That night the maintenance hangar was quiet. Most of the crew had crashed by 11. Only sounds were the distant rumble of generators and bugs buzzing against the overhead lights. The air smelled like engine oil and tropical humidity. McKenna pulled the inspection panel off Hayes's P-38 left boom. The metal was still warm from the day's sun. Inside, the aileron control cable ran through a series of pulleys toward the tail section. McKenna grabbed the cable with both hands and pulled. Felt the slack. Maybe 3/8 of an inch of play before the tension caught. His hands were covered in grease and his fingers ached from a full day of work, but he could feel that slack clearly. The piano wire came from a salvaged P-38 that had ground-looped a couple weeks earlier. The aircraft was scrap, but McKenna had pulled useful parts before it went to the depot, including a 6-inch piece of piano wire from the rudder system. He'd kept it in his tool bag without really knowing why. Now he knew. He sat on the hangar floor with the wire and a pair of pliers, bent it into a Z shape. The wire was stiff, fought back against the pliers. His hands slipped twice, cut his thumb on the second try. The blood made the wire slippery. He wiped it on his coveralls and kept working. Took him 8 minutes to get the bend right. The Z-shape would work as an inline tensioner, would add just enough tension to the cable to get rid of the slack. Installing it was harder. The space inside the boom was tight. McKenna had to work with one hand while holding a flashlight with the other. The beam kept moving. Shadows jumped across the cable system. his shoulder wedged against the boom structure. The metal edge cut into his arm. He could feel sweat running down his back despite the night air. He disconnected the cable where it met the pulley. His fingers fumbled with the pin holding it in place. Dropped it. Heard it bounce somewhere in the boom. Spent 5 minutes feeling around in the dark until he found it. The whole time, his heart was pounding. He inserted the piano wire tensioner between the cable end and the pulley. Reconnected everything. The fit was tight. He had to force the pin through. When it finally seated, he tested the tension by hand. Pulled on the cable. No slack. The control surface moved immediately. Perfect. McKenna replaced the inspection panel, cleaned up his tools, wiped the blood off the wire and his hands, walked out of the hangar at 1:15 in the morning. The tropical night was humid and still. Somewhere in the distance he heard aircraft engines. Japanese night raiders, probably. The sound made his stomach clench. This was either going to work or it wasn't. If it worked, Hayes had a real chance out there. If it didn't, well, McKenna didn't want to think about that. McKenna went to his bunk, didn't sleep, watched the ceiling until dawn. At 6:30 he walked to the flight line, watched the crew fuel and arm Hayes's aircraft, watched Hayes walk out for his briefing, watched him climb into the cockpit. At 7:42, Hayes took off. McKenna stood on the flight line and watched the P-38 climb into the morning sky, watched it join formation with 16 other aircraft, watched them head northwest toward Japanese airspace, and then all he could do was wait. The engagement started at 8:14 in the morning. Hayes's flight of 4 P-38s intercepted 9 Zeros at 13,000 feet over the Huon Gulf. The morning sun was behind them. Perfect setup for a diving attack. Hayes was flying number 3 position. His flight leader called out the target. They rolled in. Hayes picked a 0 at the back of the formation, dove from altitude, built speed to 380 miles per hour. The 0 grew larger in his gun sight. Hayes could see the painted rising sun on the fuselage. Could see the pilot's head in the canopy. He pressed the trigger. The 4 50 caliber machine guns and single 20mm cannon hammered. Tracers reached out. Most missed. A few hits sparked off the 0's wing. Not enough. The 0 snap-rolled right and dove. Hayes rolled to follow, and that's when he felt it. The airplane responded instantly. No delay, no lag. The stick moved and the aircraft rolled immediately. Hayes had never felt his P-38 move like that. It was like the airplane had been waiting for his command and executed it the moment he gave it. He rolled 90 degrees in what felt like half the normal time. Got his nose down. The 0 was right there in his sight picture. He fired again, 3-second burst. The rounds walked up the 0's fuselage from tail to cockpit. The 0's engine exploded. Pieces flew off. The aircraft rolled inverted and fell toward the jungle below, trailing black smoke. Hayes's first kill. But there was no time to think about it. His wingman called out 0s diving from above. Hayes looked up, saw 3 of them coming down in a shallow dive, coming fast. They'd seen him shoot down their buddy. Now they wanted payback. Hayes shoved the throttles forward, started to climb. But the 0s were faster in the dive. They'd be on him in seconds. His only option was to reverse and fight. Every instinct screamed at him to keep climbing, keep running. But that meant dying today. He rolled hard left, pulled. The P-38 snapped around like nothing he'd ever experienced. The nose came through the horizon. He saw the lead 0. It was turning to follow him, but hadn't expected Hayes to reverse that fast. The 0 was in a bad position, exposed. Hayes pulled lead, fired, hit the 0 in the left wing root. The wing folded. The 0 tumbled. 2 kills in 30 seconds. The other two Zeros tried to scissor with him, alternating turns to force an overshoot. Hayes stayed with them. Every time they reversed direction, his P-38 snapped into the turn instantly. No delay, no fighting the controls. The airplane did exactly what he wanted the moment he wanted it. It was like flying a completely different aircraft, like someone had removed invisible weights from the control system. One Zero made a mistake, reversed too hard, bled too much speed. Hayes got inside his turn, close range, maybe 200 feet. He fired, couldn't miss. The Zero came apart. Pieces of aircraft fell past Hayes's canopy. He felt the P-38 shudder as debris hit his right boom. 3 kills. The fourth Zero ran. Hayes didn't chase. He was low on fuel and ammunition. He climbed back to altitude, got back together with what was left of his flight. They headed home. The entire engagement lasted 7 minutes. When Hayes landed at Dobodura at 9:03, McKenna was waiting on the flight line. Hayes shut down the engines, climbed out of the cockpit. His hands were shaking. His flight suit was soaked with sweat. He walked straight to McKenna. 2 words. It worked. What neither of them realized was that 6 other pilots had watched Hayes's engagement from altitude. Captain Frank Mitchell saw the entire fight from 15,000 feet. Mitchell was a flight leader. He'd been watching Hayes's element engage the Zeros below when he noticed something unusual. Hayes's P-38 was rolling faster than any lightning Mitchell had ever seen. The aircraft snapped through maneuvers like it weighed half what it should. Mitchell knew every pilot in the theatre, knew their skill levels. Hayes was good, but not that good. Something was different about his airplane. After landing, Mitchell found Hayes in the debriefing room. Hayes was still running on adrenaline, hands shaking as he filled out his mission report. 3 confirmed kills. Mitchell asked him what was different. Hayes said he didn't know. His airplane just responded better today. Faster. Mitchell asked if maintenance had done anything to the aircraft. Hayes said he should talk to Technical Sergeant McKenna. Mitchell found McKenna in the maintenance area a couple hours later. McKenna was working on a different P-38. His hands were black with grease. Mitchell asked him directly, "What did you do to Hayes's airplane?" McKenna looked at him for a long moment, then told him, "The piano wire tensioner, the cable modification, the whole thing." Mitchell asked if he could do the same thing to his aircraft. McKenna said yes, but Mitchell had to understand. This was something McKenna figured out on his own. It wasn't standard procedure. Mitchell said he didn't care. He'd lost 4 pilots in the past month, all caught in turning fights they couldn't escape. If there was something that could help them survive, he wanted it. That evening, McKenna modified Mitchell's P-38. Same installation. Mitchell flew it the next morning, came back raving. The airplane rolled like a fighter instead of a truck, he told his wingman. The wingman wanted it too. By August 20th, McKenna had modified 9 aircraft. Word spread through the squadron. Some crew chiefs weren't comfortable trying it. Others were willing. McKenna showed them how. Cut the piano wire, bend it into a Z shape, install it. Takes 8 minutes. Hayes shot down 2 more Zeros on August 22nd. Mitchell got 3 on August 25th. Other pilots started coming back with kills. Lieutenant James Watkins was a crew chief at Guinea. He heard about the modification from a pilot who transferred from Dobodura. Tried it on 1 aircraft. The pilot came back with his first kill after 8 weeks of combat. Watkins modified 4 more. Other crew chiefs started doing it too. By early September, maybe 40 P-38s in New Guinea had the modification. The kill ratio started shifting. July. 2 P-38s lost for every Zero destroyed. August. 1.3 to 1. September. Nearly even. Something had changed. Then the Japanese noticed. Late August, Japanese flight reports mentioned American P-38s maneuvering more aggressively, rolling faster, reversing quicker. Tactics that had worked for months were suddenly failing. Lieutenant Commander Saburo Sakai was one of Japan's top aces, 64 confirmed kills. On September 3rd, he engaged a P-38 over WWII, used his standard approach, drew the American into a turning fight, then snapped his turn back to get inside the P-38's radius. Except the P-38 reversed with him. Sakai knew exactly how long it took a P-38 to roll, knew the timing perfectly. But this P-38 rolled faster than it should have. Sakai barely avoided a head-on collision. The American got guns on him. Sakai had to dive away. He came back confused. Other experienced Japanese pilots reported similar encounters. The Americans weren't flying differently, but their aircraft were responding faster. Fractionally, but enough to matter. Japanese intelligence examined wreckage from downed P-38s. Found nothing. The aircraft looked identical. Same engines, same armament. Nothing visible had changed. The change was hidden inside the boom, a 6-inch piece of piano wire that looked like it belonged there. Even if they'd found it, they might not have understood what it did. Just a small adjustment to control cable tension. But that small adjustment was changing the game. By mid-September, Japanese pilots were losing aircraft to P-38s at rates they hadn't seen since early in the war. For 2 years, 0 pilots had owned the sky in turning fights. That confidence was breaking down. Pilots who used to press attacks were becoming cautious, hesitant. Some pilots stopped trying to turn fight P-38s, used hit and run instead. But that meant giving up their main advantage. The Zero's strength was maneuverability. Fighting like a P-38 meant fighting on American terms. Other pilots tried being more aggressive, closing to shorter range, taking more risks. But aggression without the ability to outturn the enemy just meant going down faster. The fundamental problem? Japanese pilots were fighting an enemy they couldn't see. They knew something had changed but couldn't figure out what. You can't develop tactics against a modification you don't know exists. By the end of September, the 11th Air Fleet had lost 38 fighters in combat with P-38s. American losses, 22 aircraft. The ratio had reversed. Japanese command issued guidance. Avoid engaging P-38s unless you have significant numerical advantage. The Zero had gone from hunter to hunted, and it all came down to a piece of piano wire. October 1943, a maintenance inspector at Dobodura noticed something interesting with cable tension readings. Traced it back to the piano wire tensioners. Word got back to Lockheed. November, Lockheed sent engineers to New Guinea. They tested it, measured everything, ran flight tests. Their conclusion? It worked. The P-38J model that came out in December 1943 included a similar tensioning system. Hayes survived the war. 63 missions, 11 kills. Returned to Iowa in 1945. Married his high school sweetheart. Worked as a crop duster for 37 years. He never forgot what McKenna did. Every year on August 17th, Hayes called McKenna to say thank you. Every single year. Mitchell survived too. Squadron commander, led his unit through the Philippines, 16 kills total. Retired as a colonel in 1963. Told McKenna's story to every young officer he supervised. McKenna stayed in the Army Air Force until 1946. Went back to California. Opened his own garage in Long Beach in 1948. Worked on engines for 42 years. Never talked much about the war. When people asked, he'd say he was a mechanic. Fixed airplanes. That's all. In 1991, a military historian found references to the piano wire tensioner in old maintenance logs. Tracked down McKenna. He was 73, still working part-time in his garage. The historian asked him about it. McKenna confirmed the story. said it wasn't anything special, just something that needed doing. The historian estimated the modification saved between 80 and 100 American pilots based on survival rates. McKenna said he never counted. He just remembered the ones who came back. Hayes Mitchell, Watkins, the others. That was enough. James McKenna died in 2006 at 88. They buried him at Pacific View Memorial Park in California. His obituary mentioned his service in World War II as an aircraft mechanic. Nothing about the piano wire tensioner. Nothing about changing how American fighters flew. His garage in Long Beach is still there. Different owner now. But on the wall in the back office, there's a faded photograph. Young mechanic in coveralls standing next to a P-38 Lightning. The date written on the back says, August 1943, New Guinea. That's the story. A piece of piano wire. 8 minutes of work. Changed everything. James McKenna died in 2006 at 88. They buried him at Pacific View Memorial Park in California. His obituary mentioned his service in World War II as an aircraft mechanic. Nothing about the piano wire tensioner. Nothing about changing how American fighters flew. His garage in Long Beach is still there. Different owner now. But on the wall in the back office, there's a faded photograph. Young mechanic in coveralls standing next to a P-38 Lightning. The date written on the back says, August 1943, New Guinea. That's the story. A piece of piano wire. 8 minutes of work. Changed everything. Listen, if this story hit you the way it hit us, do us a favor, hit that like button. It genuinely helps us share more forgotten stories like this one with people who actually care about them. And if you want more of these, stories about people who changed history but their names got lost, go ahead and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one, because there are so many stories like McKenna's sitting out there that nobody talks about anymore. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We've got viewers everywhere, Texas to Tasmania, veterans to history lovers. You're all part of something here. Thanks for watching, and thanks for helping keep these stories alive.